Hello, my name is Izzy, and today I'm going to be presenting about Amy Johnson, the aviator, who was the first woman to fly solo from Croydon to Australia. And although this was one of the main things that she's famous for, she also did a lot of other really cool things as well. So I'm going to start out with Amy Johnson's early life. So Amy was born in 1903 on July 1st, and she was born in Hull, Yorkshire, England. She was one of four sisters, and she was the oldest, and her father owned a business that imported and exported fish, actually. And once she got older, she ended up studying at a university named Sheffield University in 1923, and she earned her bachelor's in the arts. Interesting enough, a little fun fact is she said that she left the university to try a new life in London after a failed love affair, apparently. And then this is her on the right. So, when Amy was first discovering aviation, it was when she was living in London after she left her university. So while living here, she worked for a firm of solicitors and she worked under them as a secretary. It was here in London where she found an interest in aviation. And so specifically, she found her interest at the Stag Lane Aerodrome in North London. And it was said that she initially would just go and watch the planes, and then she ended up wanting to participate herself. So she spent lots of time here, and also while she was getting her pilot license, she ended up earning an engineering C license as well. And so she continued doing engineering and mechanical work throughout her aviation career. So at the London Aerodrome, she joined the London Aeroplane Club, and her father gave her financial support, and she earned her pilot license in the winter of 1929 after she began the previous year. So here she continued working as a ground engineer all throughout her training and then after, as I've said. So her most famous flight, which is usually what's going to come up first when you search up Amy, was her solo flight to Australia. And this was actually done only a year after she got her license initially. And this flight really got the attention of the press and put her name out in the aviation community who didn't really know who she was yet. And her original goal for the flight was to beat the world record for fastest solo flight to Australia from Croydon. At the time, this record was held by male aviator Bert Hinkler. And while she wasn't able to break his record during this flight, she ended up facing a lot of obstacles that made her very famous. This included a sandstorm over Iraq, a monsoon in Burma, and this particular monsoon damaged her wings and broke her propeller. But since she is a mechanic, she was able to talk to local mechanics and found leftover World War I plane parts and fixed her plane and continued her flight. So, some of her accomplishments, other than her solo to Australia, was one in 1931. She flew a Puss-Moth and set a record for England to Japan with one of her associates, Jack Humphreys. Then the following year in July as well, she sets another record in the Puss-Moth solo from England to Cape Town. And then she ended up getting married to a man, and they had a lot of flights together that they were pretty famous for. In 1933, they flew a DH Dragon nonstop from South Wales to the United States, and then another nonstop record in a DH Comet in an air race from England to India. And then after they finished that race, they stopped in Australia. And towards the end of her career, or at the end of it, she ended up commercial flying for the air auxiliary transport to ferry aircrafts to an RAF base with a lot of other accomplished pilots as well, they were all in a group for that. So here's some pictures and fun facts about Amy, because there's some other pretty interesting stuff that you can find about her. She had a lot of nicknames, specifically in the press, throughout her entire career, and some of those included Wonderful Miss Johnson and the Lone Girl Flyer, because she ended, as you know, she did a lot of solo flying. And then it's also known that Amy has a lot of songs written about her as well. So according to the Amy Johnson Arts Trust, which is a trust that's held in her honor because she earned her bachelor's in the arts, she had at least 10 songs written about her, and then quite a few extras that are still under speculation whether they're about her or someone else. But the most famous at the time was called Amy, Wonderful Amy. And then Amy also ended up modeling for a while, and she modeled for Elsa Schiaparelli. And here's one of the pictures from her modeling career, but I thought that was something cool that she did kind of on the side. And then we go into Amy's last major flight. It was the 5th of January in 1941 when she had her last flight, and the weather was known to be bad on this day, but it still remains unknown, like, what really happened during the flight. She was flying an Airspeed Oxford plane with twin engines, and the flight was scheduled to go from Blackpool Aerodrome to RAF, which is near Oxford. However, it is said that she parachuted around 4 hours after her takeoff time near Thames Estuary, and she did not survive. Her body was never found, and only very minuscule pieces of her plane were actually found, which now lie in the British War Museum. And there's many speculators that debate on what actually happened, and you can find a lot of different people online that kind of guess as to what happened on that flight. But some of them are the weather conditions, some of them are about her fuel levels, and nobody really knows what the true cause or where Amy herself ended up because her body was never found. But up in the right corner, you can see that is the only known piece that is definitely from Amy's plane. And the picture is a little bit patchy, but that note on the top has some different facts about that little piece, and that's what is in the British War Museum right now. So I wanted to put a little sequence of events in here because Amy's piloting career actually wasn't very long, but in 1929 is when she obtained her license, and then the following year is when she flew solo to Australia, and then the year after that, she flew from England to Japan. And then about 9 years later is when she was ferrying for the government to the RAF base. And then the following year after she started working with the military is when she had her final flight. And then on the right here is her with her plane Jason, which is a pretty famous plane of hers. And then I included a quote from Amy, which says, "Had I been a man, I might have explored the poles or climbed Mount Everest, but as it was, my spirit found outlet in the air." And then I wanted to include these photos on the bottom because that is her with Amelia Earhart, actually, and you can find a lot of photos of them together, and they're pretty known to be friends. And I thought that was really cool because Amelia is known worldwide, but especially in America because she's an American pilot. So I thought that was a cool connection between two very famous women aviators in history. And then here I included some more pretty cool pictures. You can see some of them are of her doing her mechanics and engineering with her C license, and you can see on the top one the plane says London Aeroplane Club, which is where she started flying. And then on the left over here, you can see her initial application for her pilot's license, which was in July of 1929. And you can see the date and then her signature on the bottom there. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then here are all my sources. Thank you so much.